You arrive here with a question tugging quietly at the edge of your day. What if the way you think about wealth has been tilted a few degrees off, not enough to notice in a single morning, but enough to carry you far from where you meant to go? Perhaps you have felt that tilt in your body, the shallow breath before bills, the tight jaw when you open a banking app, the rush of hope with a new idea, followed by the familiar weight of doubt. I want you to know that I see that weight. I see the careful person who works hard, who pushes through noise and demands, and who wonders why more effort hasn't produced more peace. This is not a lecture. This is a gentle turning of the inner compass. It is a hand on your shoulder and a light at your feet, both at the same time. There is a kind of wisdom that does not shout, and yet it rearranges the furniture inside your mind so thoroughly that even your posture changes. You can feel it when you sit a little taller, when your breathing lengthens, when the room seems to make space for you. Wisdom does not scold your past or shame your attempts. It honors the part of you that kept going and speaks to the part of you that longs to go well. Today is not about hype or luck. It is about the quiet architecture of a stable life, a life where prosperity is not a trophy on a high shelf, but the natural harvest of a well-ordered field. The ancient voice we are listening to has seen palaces and markets, contracts and covenants, victories and ruins. It never begins with greed. It begins with understanding. When that voice asks what you truly want, it invites you to choose insight over glitter, judgment over noise, clarity over hurry. And then, almost as a surprise, what you need for the work ahead comes to meet you. This is not magic. This is design. When thinking is aligned, choices become straighter. When choices become straighter, results become steadier. And when results become steadier, the heart rests long enough to see further than the next payday. Picture a plumb line, simple, weighted, true, falling from the ceiling of your mind to the floor of your decisions. If that line is steady, the walls of your inner house rise clean, and the rooms can hold treasure without cracking. When the line is off, everything looks fine for a while, until the strain shows up in corners and doors that never quite close. The millionaire mindset we are building is not glitter on crooked walls. It is the slow, exact joy of getting the angles right. In the language of the body, it is the moment your prefrontal clarity steps in before your limbic alarm, the moment attention becomes a steward rather than a hostage. The brain loves shortcuts and quick hits. It also loves patterns and safety. When you give it a wise pattern, it starts choosing safety in a deeper way. The safety of integrity, the safety of patience, the safety of saying yes at the right time and no at the right time. You may carry the memory of financial decisions you wish you could rework, and there may be a tightness in your chest as those memories surface. Let this be a kinder moment. Regret has a job to point you toward a better pattern, and then sit down. It is not the architect here. As you listen, notice your body, notice your breath, notice the way your shoulders shift when you hear something that rings true. That is your nervous system recognizing a trustworthy rhythm. We are not chasing adrenaline tonight. We are cultivating signal. If fear surges, it will pass. If excitement sprints ahead, invite it to walk with you. This is the speed of real change, steady enough to last, humane enough to keep your heart open. Think of your life as a vineyard spread across the seasons, pruning that feels like loss, planting that looks like hope, building trellises that no one praises, and harvest that arrives because the quiet work was done at the quiet time. Our culture rewards the loud moments, but your future will be built by the quiet ones. You already know how to labor. What you are learning now is how to labor in tune. The mind in tune wastes less energy, loses fewer chances, and recovers faster when it stumbles. The mind in tune hears which door is truly for it, and which door only looks urgent because someone else is knocking loudly on the other side. Hear this repeated truth, not as a slogan, but as a slower breath moving through you. Wisdom comes first and wealth follows. Wisdom comes first and peace follows. Wisdom comes first and a future you can trust follows. Let the words settle in your chest, then in your stomach, then in your hands. The more your body believes them, the more your mind will make space for them, and the more your choices will begin to line up. Repetition is not manipulation. It is rehearsal for a better reflex. The next time a shiny decision rushes you, these words will be near your tongue, and you will feel the ground return under your feet. Before we go deeper, set the room in your favor. If you can, place your phone face down and let the notifications wait for you instead of you waiting for them. Sit with both feet on the floor or lie back with your spine supported and let your breath count to 4 in, hold for 4, and release for 6. This is not indulgence. This is strategic. A calmer body gives your wiser mind the microphone. When you listen from calm, you hear the difference between impulse and intuition. Impulse shouts. Intuition speaks softly, but carries continuity. It remembers your values from last week and wants you to keep them. You have not missed your moment. You are not behind. You are not disqualified because a plan failed, or a deal collapsed, or a season embarrassed you. You are here, and here is where truth begins to carry weight again. The most expensive thing you could lose is not a number in an account. It is the belief that your choices can become wiser than your fears. Keep that belief close. Guard it. Feed it with small proofs. Every day offers a handful of decisions that do not make headlines but do set foundations. Take them slowly. Let them be clean. I am not asking you to become someone else. I am inviting you to return to the part of you that has always known what is right, but needed language for it. That part is older than panic, older than envy, older than the pressure to perform. It cares about how money is made, not just that money is made. It cares about the weight of your name in a room, not just whether your name is known. It cares about agreements that add dignity to all involved, not just outcomes that add digits to a balance. When that part leads, you feel it. The jaw unclenches, the gaze steadies, the stomach softens, your body thanks you, your future thanks you. As we step into this journey, carry one question like a small stone in your pocket, smooth and reassuring to the touch. If wisdom became the first move in every decision I make starting now, what would naturally follow? Keep turning that stone in your hand as you listen, and notice how your mind starts to sort the urgent from the essential. Notice how your heart begins to prefer what is quiet and true over what is loud and quick. Notice how the room feels larger when you are not forcing an outcome, but arranging your inner furniture to receive it. A straighter line, a calmer breath, a clearer next step. This is how wealth, the steady kind, begins. There is a hunger that looks like ambition and feels like anxiety. It sprints through long days and late nights, buying more effort with the currency of exhaustion, certain that more speed will finally unlock more security. The body knows this pattern is expensive. Breath grows shallow, shoulders rise, sleep comes in pieces, and the mind leaps from plan to plan like a restless bird. Beneath the hustle, a quiet pain keeps whispering that something essential is being traded away. Not progress, not discipline, something more subtle. The ability to choose well before choosing fast. The ancient counsel does not shame this hunger. It understands it. It turns the light toward a different first move. Instead of chasing wealth as if it were a prize just out of reach, it invites a reordering of the inner room where decisions are made. Wisdom first. Wealth as a natural aftertaste. This order is not glamorous, and yet, when it settles into a life, the pace changes. The mind stops bargaining with time. The heart stops trying to earn its worth through results. Effort is still present, but it is guided, not frantic. The difference is visible even in posture. The jaw softens, the gaze steadies. Choice begins to feel like alignment rather than combat. Many have been taught that more hours automatically mean more harvest. The story sounds heroic, but it quietly trains the nervous system to prefer urgency over discernment. The prefrontal hush that weighs options and sees long arcs is drowned out by the drum of now. When now rules the house, Everything valuable becomes a fire to put out or a mountain to sprint up. The outcome is familiar. Work increases. Decisions multiply. Results wobble. Peace disappears. It is not because the person is lazy or weak. It is because the order is reversed. The plumb line is tilted, so the walls carry stress that no one sees until the cracks arrive. Picture that simple tool again. A weighted line drawing truth from ceiling to floor. When the line is steady, every wall can bear treasure without strain. When the line is tilted, even beautiful finishes cannot save the structure. In a mind aligned with wisdom, choices fall into place with a kind of quiet click. The body recognizes that click as relief. The breath lengthens. The stomach loosens. A small but unmistakable sense of safety returns. This is emotional neuroscience in everyday clothing. The amygdala no longer needs to flood the room because the prefrontal steward is present and calm. Over time, that calm becomes a habit. Habits become reflex. Reflex becomes character. There is a gentle practice that keeps the line true. Think of it as a ledger that honors discernment more than urgency. In the morning, a question rises that clears the fog. What is wise rather than merely urgent? At midday, another question keeps the horizon in view. Which choice will compound across years? When night arrives, a final question closes the loop. Which action brought both peace and fruit? No shouting, no punishment, just a rhythm that teaches the mind to prefer depth over noise. With repetition, the questions carve a new pathway in the brain, one that seeks alignment before action and meaning before motion. If this order is ignored, the cost is not only financial, it is emotional and spiritual. The heart grows suspicious of hope. The mind learns to doubt its own voice. The body treats rest like an enemy and treats distraction like medicine. Money may pass through such a life, but it rarely stays. And when it stays, it rarely satisfies. The person begins to believe that nothing works for them, when in truth, the structure could not carry the weight being placed upon it. Straighten the line, and the same effort begins to build rather than erode. The same opportunities begin to nourish rather than deplete. Wealth in this frame is not the first pursuit. It is a byproduct of ordered thinking and clean choices. It arrives the way a harvest arrives after a season of right planting and right tending. No one can command the fruit into existence, but everyone can tend the soil that makes fruit likely. In the same way, no one can guarantee a perfect outcome, but anyone can train a mind to see clearly and a heart to choose steadily. That training changes how offers are evaluated, how partnerships are formed, how risks are sized, and how timing is honored. It changes the way a no is delivered and the way a yes is carried. The world loves noise and heat. Algorithms reward urgency and outrage. Yet the kind of prosperity that endures prefers another climate. It grows in rooms where attention is not constantly sold, where values do not change with each headline, where gratitude is not postponed until a number is reached. Here, wisdom is not a theory. It is a living guide that keeps tugging decisions into line with integrity. It asks whether this opportunity aligns with the person you are becoming. It asks whether the gain will demand a cost you cannot pay without thinning your soul. It asks whether the timing honors the season you are in, rather than the pace others expect from you. There is a subtle joy in this order. It does not spike like adrenaline. It settles like evening light on a clean table. You begin to notice that you are not arguing with yourself as much. You notice fewer apologies to your future self. You notice that peace visits you even when results are still forming, because peace is no longer hostage to outcomes. Paradoxically, outcomes begin to improve. People trust a calm presence. Partners respect a steady yes and a clear no. Opportunities that once slipped by unnoticed now register because your attention is not frayed. The ledger of discernment has trained your eyes. Listen to the body as it responds to this shift. The breath that once hurried now moves with patience. The chest that once felt armored now carries weight without hardening. The face that once strained to convince now rests. And in that rest, others find their own. This is not softness in the sense of weakness. It is softness in the sense of precision. A sharpened blade meets almost no resistance, A straight line bears great weight. A mind that has chosen wisdom first moves through complex rooms with a quiet authority that needs no announcement. If you have ever felt behind, remember that the gate into this order is always here. Not a dramatic vow, not a perfect plan, a single renewed preference for wisdom before action. Again and again, until it becomes who you are. In time, the results speak in ways that cannot be faked. The calendar looks different. The bank account tells a clearer story. The relationships around money feel less tense and more honest. The inner voice that once tried to be both coach and critic learns to be a guide. The plumb line remains in view. The ledger remains open. The house grows sound. In this atmosphere, wealth is not an idol or an enemy. It is a servant with a good assignment. It fuels visions that stretch beyond self. It repairs what was neglected. It strengthens what is already noble. And it does so without owning you. The order is the secret. Wisdom first. Wealth follows. Say it slowly until your breath finds its rhythm. Let it live in your decisions until your life begins to echo it back. There is a strange fatigue that arrives even in seasons of good income, a fog that rolls in after a win and dampens the joy before it can take root. And it often begins where attention frays and small choices slip by unguarded. Money seems to pass through the hands like water through fingers, not because of one grand failure, but because of the quiet drip of unexamined habits, the tiny agreements we make with hurry, the little bargains we strike with our restless need to keep up. The body knows when this is happening. The stomach tightens after a casual purchase. The breath shortens during late-night scrolling that pretends to soothe but only stirs. The mind wakes at dawn, already bargaining with itself, promising to do better while repeating the same patterns it fears. The old wisdom sees this long before the leak becomes a flood. It points not to catastrophe, but to foxes in the vineyard, small and swift and easily ignored, yet perfectly capable of spoiling a harvest if left to run their course. The danger is rarely one dramatic decision. It is the accumulation of tiny indulgences that weaken structure, the envy that nudges the hand toward purchases that do not fit the season, the impulse that covers anxiety with a quick hit of novelty. These are not moral failures so much as misalignments, and misalignments carry a cost the heart eventually pays in disappointment. There is a gentler pattern that keeps the value we labor to create from silently evaporating. Some call it gates rather than goals. Not as a rigid system, but as a loving set of thresholds that wisdom places at the entrances to our daily choices. One gate is a delayed yes that spans a full day before any meaningful purchase, a spacious pause that lets desire settle and lets the true need speak. In the body, it feels like relief because the nervous system is granted time to move from alarm to clarity. And in that calm, the choice often changes shape. The object may still be chosen, but the choice will carry less heat and more peace. And peace is the scent of a wise decision. Another gate is the counsel check before commitments. A simple return to the table where trusted voices have permission to ask the questions we forget to ask when excitement is high. This is not about surrendering agency. It is about honoring the reality that perspective narrows under pressure and widens in conversation. The heart that welcomes counsel is not weak. It is strong enough to allow the light of another mind to fall on a decision that will shape time, energy, and reputation. Often the most valuable thing we hear is a question that reveals what we truly want, and in that revealing, haste loses its grip. A third gate transforms comparison into craft. Instead of feeding the mind with endless images that trigger scarcity and envy, this gate redirects that same hour into building a skill, refining a system, or deepening a relationship that makes future work cleaner. The brain learns quickly which inputs lead to steadiness and which inputs lead to agitation. When we replace the scroll with practice, the body notices. Shoulders lower, breath deepens, focus returns. Over weeks, this quiet exchange compounds, and what once felt like willpower becomes rhythm, which is stronger than willpower because it asks less every day. If these gates are ignored, the outcome is painfully familiar. We earn and remain empty. We upgrade and remain unsatisfied. We perform and feel strangely invisible to ourselves. The calendar fills with activity that does not build anything we actually care about. And at night, the mind rehearses losses that never needed to happen. It is not that success is impossible. It is that success leaks through cracks no one bothered to seal. Peace becomes a stranger, not because we are unworthy of it, but because we have not yet learned how to keep what matters from slipping away drop by drop. Prosperity is not only created, it is protected. Restraint is not punishment. It is a shelter for value, a boundary that allows abundance to take shape without being spilled at the edges. When restraint is framed as deprivation, the nervous system rebels and calls it unfair. When restraint is framed as care, the nervous system relaxes and calls it safety. This shift is quiet but profound. Choices that once felt like denial begin to feel like dignity. Decisions that once felt like losing begin to feel like keeping. The heart learns to recognize a truer kind of wealth, the kind that remains after the thrill fades. Hold the image of a leaky cistern and a sealed jar. In the first, water gathers only to trickle away, no matter how faithfully you return with the bucket. In the second, the same water is held, clean and ready, available for the moment it is needed. The difference is not in the amount of water. The difference is in the integrity of the vessel. Our lives are vessels. Our habits are seams. Where seams are sound, value stays. Where seams are split, effort must work twice to stand still. This is not a judgment, it is a map, and maps are kind because they tell the truth about where we are and how to get home. Feel the repetition that heals rather than shames. Small leaks steal large harvests. Small leaks steal large hopes. Small leaks steal large peace. Let the words sink below the mind and find the place in the body where they become resolve without harshness. Resolve like a deep root that holds in wind. Resolve like a hand that closes lightly over what is good and refuses to let it slip for a momentary thrill. The future that waits for this kind of resolve is not loud. It is steady. It is the sound of water held well. There will still be beautiful things to enjoy and generous moments to share, but they will emerge from a sealed jar rather than a cracked one, and that distinction alters the feeling of everything. Enjoyment without guilt, generosity without fear, investment without the throb of panic behind the eyes. This is what happens when folly is named and calmed, when envy is noticed and released, when impulse is given a softer place to land than purchase or pride. Attention becomes a guardian instead of a consumer. Desire becomes a guide instead of a tyrant. When the gates stand and the vessel holds, life turns outward in a healthier way. Opportunities that align with calling become easier to recognize, because noise is lower and signal is higher. People who value integrity find you because your decisions carry a quiet consistency that cannot be faked. The very same income begins to tell a different story, one with less hurry and more meaning, less grasping and more gratitude, fewer apologies to your future self, and more agreements you are glad you kept. The vineyard is still vulnerable to little foxes, but now you notice them sooner, and noticing is power. Close the leaks, and the house grows peaceful. Close the leaks, and the mind regains space. Close the leaks, and the heart remembers that prosperity does not require frenzy. Allow that truth to sit beside you like a friend who knows your history and believes your future. In that company, restraint feels like kindness, counsel feels like wisdom, and comparison loses its appetite. The jar is sealed, the water is kept, the harvest is protected, the soul is at rest. There is a loneliness that wears a busy face. It looks like independence and feels like pressure. It says that carrying it all alone is noble, while the body whispers that the weight is not meant for a single spine. The breath grows thin during decisions that matter. The jaw tightens before every negotiation. The night stretches long when a choice echoes without an honest voice to meet it. Success gathered in isolation often leaves a quiet ache, as if something essential was missing from the very moment it was won. The ache is not weakness. It is the truth that vision grows taller when it has a table to stand on instead of a single narrow leg. Old wisdom speaks with a calm certainty about the power of shared sight. Plans falter where counsel is thin. Plans gain strength where many eyes bring light from different angles. Advice in this frame is not control, it is clarity. It is the way a room brightens when more than one window is opened. Perspective widens. Risk is sized with more sobriety and less fear. Patterns appear that one mind alone might miss, not because it is foolish, but because every mind has a horizon. In counsel, the horizon moves back. In covenant, the floor grows steadier underfoot. Imagine a table that belongs to your life. It is a simple table, sturdy and warm, and it has seats that carry distinct gifts. One person brings the gravity of character and keeps the conversation honest. Another brings models and maps and knows how things work beneath what they seem. A third loves systems and helps a plan become a process that holds under stress. A fourth understands capital and cost and speaks gently about the price of every path. A fifth tells the truth without perfume and protects the name you are building by reminding you who you are. Together, they do not drown your voice, they deepen it. Alliances formed at such a table are not merely social, they are structural. They are the beams that span the distance between idea and execution. They are the agreements that turn effort into momentum and momentum into durability. When the time comes to enter a contract or to consider a partnership, covenantal thinking asks different questions. It asks whether promises are clear and mutual. It asks whether the gain aligns with the character that must live with it. It asks whether the leaving is as honorable as the joining should something change. In that atmosphere, trust has room to breathe, and trust is the oxygen of enduring prosperity. The nervous system recognizes the goodness of this way. The shoulders lower when trusted voices arrive. The stomach loosens when a decision is held by a circle rather than clutched by a single pair of hands. Cortisol eases. Attention steadies. A person who felt scattered begins to feel placed. There is relief in knowing that a blind spot will be met by a friend who sees from that angle. There is confidence in knowing that an idea will be tested without being humiliated. There is safety in knowing that caution and courage will take turns rather than fight for control. Isolation often disguises itself as focus. It claims that others will slow the pace or dilute the vision. Sometimes it is pride wearing the mask of efficiency. Sometimes it is fatigue pretending to be strength. In either case, the cost shows up later. Errors that could have been gently corrected grow teeth. Opportunities that needed a second mind to recognize pass by unwelcomed. Achievements that should feel rich taste thin. The story becomes heroic but lonely, and loneliness rarely scales well. Even kings required a counsel. Even the wisest welcomed a voice that could say the word no with kindness and the word yes with clarity. At the table of counsel, disagreement is not war. It is heat that tempers metal. It is the conversation that takes an idea out of the realm of fantasy and sets it down in the world where it has to walk. In that heat, ego softens, assumptions melt. The core of the plan is revealed. The parts that cannot stand are reshaped, not to satisfy vanity, but to honor reality. The result carries a peace that can be felt in the body. The gaze steadies because the path has been seen from several sides. The breath evens because the next step no longer depends on a single fragile guess. Covenants are promises with edges. They name expectations instead of leaving them to wishful thinking. They describe what support looks like when things go well and what honor looks like when they do not. They do not romanticize loyalty, they design it. This design does not stifle love or creativity. It frees them. People who know where the edges are can play with more abandon inside the field. Partners who know how to part well are less likely to part at all. The work that comes from such agreements feels different. It carries lightness without carelessness and gravity without fear. There is a gentle rhythm that emerges from this way of building. Decisions are not rushed to satisfy anxiety. Insights are not hoarded to maintain control. Credit is shared without shrinking anyone. Accountability is welcomed because it protects the future rather than punishes the past. Over time, this rhythm becomes culture. Culture becomes a shelter for everyone who joins the work. In that shelter, creativity shows its best self. Ideas arrive that would never visit a room where blame waits behind every door. Opportunities open that only open for names associated with steadiness and fairness. Notice how the body responds even to the idea of such a table. There is warmth in the chest and a sense of settling along the spine. This is your inner world, recognizing belonging as a resource. We are not built to thrive in rooms where we cannot be seen. Being seen does not mean being flattered. It means being held to what is highest in you. It means being reminded that every decision is not only a transaction, it is a statement about who you are becoming. That reminder is a gift that keeps your feet where your values live, especially when the moment is loud and the stakes are high. The harvest of counsel is not only smarter choices, it is a different quality of life. Deals feel cleaner, risks feel measured rather than reckless, wins feel shared and therefore more satisfying. Losses turn into wisdom more quickly because shame does not poison the learning. You begin to trust your own judgment more because your judgment has been seasoned by others who want your good. The story of your prosperity becomes communal without losing its personal beauty. The name you are building gathers weight and warmth, and doors open for a presence that carries both. In time, the table itself becomes a quiet symbol. It says that wealth in this house is not a solitary chase. It is a covenantal craft. It flows through agreements that honor people as much as outcomes. It is guarded by advice that is strong enough to disagree and loyal enough to stay. It is the kind of wealth that can be celebrated without a wince in the soul because it was gathered in a way that left dignity intact. The memory of that dignity lasts longer than any number, and it has a way of inviting more of the same. There is a pressure that calls itself progress and still leaves the heart panting. It moves fast, counts days like coins, and treats quiet like a debt that must be repaid later with louder effort. The body keeps the score of this pace. The head hums at night when it should be still. The chest feels busy even in an empty room. The hands reach for the next task before the last one has blessed you with its meaning. Underneath all this movement lives a softer truth. Growth does not answer to hurry. Growth answers to season. When the inner calendar is honored, the same work carries less strain and yields more fruit, and the person inside the work begins to feel whole again. Ancient wisdom speaks of a time to plant and a time to gather, a time to build and a time to clear away, a time to keep and a time to release. The language is simple, and it is also surgical. It cuts through the myth that every day must be everything. The nervous system understands this relief. When a day is allowed to be what it is, the body switches from alarm to attention. Breathing deepens, sight widens. Choices lose their panic and gain their shape. The mind that once scattered itself across 10 directions begins to prefer one honest path. Every enduring field follows a rhythm. There is a season of learning when roots reach for water beneath the surface. This is the quiet labor that gathers inputs without proving itself to anyone. Curiosity is not a luxury in this season. It is the soil turning and opening. The brain loves this stage when pressure is gentle. Dopamine settles into a healthier pattern, not as a frantic chase for novelty, but as a steady reward for connection and comprehension. The person does not look successful in the loud ways during this time, yet something permanent is being planted below the visible line. Then comes the building season when patterns become processes and ideas become scaffolding. It is not glamorous, and that is its hidden strength. Systems are born here that will later carry weight when life grows heavier. The body experiences this season as a satisfying fatigue rather than a frantic depletion. Muscles ache, and the mind feels used in the best way. Cortisol rises and falls in a curve that serves the work rather than burns the worker. Nights bring recovery instead of spinning thought. because effort and meaning are finally moving together. There is also the gathering season when results ripen and must be brought in before they are lost. This is not a time to be shy about the harvest. It is a time to accept the proof that patience has value. In the body, this can feel like a bright hum, a sense of rightness as effort converts into outcomes with relatively little drag. Relationships built in quieter months now reveal their fruit. Doors open because names have gathered trust. Money arrives more cleanly because the structure welcomes it. The nervous system reads this as safety rather than threat and allows enjoyment without the usual undertow of guilt. No field remains fertile without a pruning season. Clearing is not failure. It is wisdom honoring limits. Costs are examined, commitments are cleaned, tools are sharpened, and some are set down. Space is made that looks empty to people who love only acceleration. And yet this space is the worthiest investment of all, because capacity returns. The body knows the difference between loss and pruning. Loss feels like something precious slipping away. Pruning feels like something heavy being lifted off, so that what is alive can breathe. The chest opens, the face softens, energy returns without a whip. When seasons are ignored, work becomes a single blurry weather pattern that never changes, and life tries to be all things at once, until it becomes good at nothing in particular. Launches happen while learning is still needed. Harvest is attempted without building. Pruning is feared until crisis forces a harsher cut. The cost shows up everywhere. Projects stall, money sticks for a moment and then slides. Partnerships fray because timing was wrong even when intention was right. The heart, unable to find rhythm, mistakes exhaustion for destiny and begins to write a smaller story to survive. There is a quiet intelligence in letting time lead. It is not passivity. It is harmony. Seasons become a set of gentle questions that guide decision-making without shouting. Is this a month for gathering inputs or for putting structure around what is already known? Is this a week for expanding a reach or for tightening the bolts on what exists? Is this a day to bring results to market or to let a plan breathe and be refined? When these questions touch a choice, the body answers. Muscles either resist or relax. Breath shortens or lengthens. The honest response in the body often tells the truth faster than the mind can. The culture of constant now trains the nervous system to live on spikes. It rewards immediacy with loud signals and teaches a brain to crave the hit more than the harvest. Those spikes feel like life, yet they leave a residue of emptiness that accumulates like dust in the corners. Rhythm is different. Rhythm builds a life instead of an episode. It educates appetite. It moves the locus of reward from the quick reaction to the steady return. Over time, the mind learns to seek longer arcs and to trust the quiet parts of the process that previously felt like nothing was happening. Seasons also change how we carry setbacks. A failed attempt during a building phase is not an indictment. It is an instruction. A slow month during a pruning phase is not a warning sign. It is part of the plan blessing you with margin. This reframing touches the body right away. Shame releases its grip. Curiosity takes its place. Sleep deepens because tomorrow is not a tribunal. It is another page in a longer chapter that has context. In that context, wisdom rises again as the first move. The person who once scattered in panic now adjusts like a craftsperson who knows their materials and trusts their hand. Timing rearranges relationships in a kinder way. Partners are not pushed into visibility before trust is mature. Capital is not invited into a structure that cannot yet hold it with integrity. Opportunities are not accepted simply because they are available. Availability is not destiny. Alignment is. When alignment becomes the measure, the no that once felt like fear becomes a truthful protection, and the yes that once came from pressure becomes a free response. People sense this change. They feel steadiness where there used to be hurry. They lean in because steadiness is rare and trustworthy. The vineyard image returns here with a softer light. Vines tied gently to trellises, early do not break when wind arrives. Rows that look empty after pruning are not empty. They are clean. Ground that rests between plantings is not idle. It is restoring what roots will need. When a life is arranged like this, prosperity has somewhere to land without cracking the floorboards. The house holds. The name gathers a different kind of weight. Peace becomes part of the profit rather than something purchased later as a repair. There is healing in the repetition. There is a time. There is a time to listen beneath the noise. There is a time to shape what listening has shown. There is a time to bring the work into the light. There is a time to clear the table and wash the tools. Let these words meet the breath until their cadence becomes your cadence. The mind that honors sequence finds strength without strain. The heart that honors sequence finds joy without apology. The body that honors sequence finds rest without guilt. When pace bows to season, life bends toward fruitfulness almost by itself. The calendar stops being a battlefield. It becomes a garden. The weeks stop blurring into a smear of effort. They begin to take on the colors of their purpose. Even the hard days look different. They belong to something. They are not wasted. And inside that belonging, wealth stops feeling like a chase and starts feeling like the weather that arrives after long, faithful work in the right time. There is a way of holding money that feels like holding breath. The chest tightens, the hands close, the eyes scan for threats even in a quiet room. Fear calls itself wisdom and whispers that keeping everything is the only safe way to live. Yet the body knows this is not safety, it is strain. It is the ache of a life that stores without circulating, a life where value piles up without purpose and begins to press down on the heart it was meant to support. Ancient counsel points to a different movement, not a dam built out of worry, but a river guided by banks. In this way, wealth is not the hero. It is the water that nourishes fields along the way. The mind softens when it hears this. The shoulders lower. The breath lengthens. The nervous system, long trained to brace for loss, begins to recognize that flow can mean safety when the channel is true. Generosity in this light is not a leak. It is an intelligence. It breaks the spell of scarcity that tells the body to stay small, even when there is enough. It widens the inner room so that receiving and releasing can live in peace with each other. Picture 3 rooms inside the house of your finances. One is steadfast, the place where essentials and reserves rest without apology. Another is expansion, the workshop where investment and ventures are shaped with care and courage. The third is overflow, the bright space where giving and legacy projects are born and where meaning multiplies what money alone cannot. In lives ordered by flow, income enters the house and takes its place in these rooms with a steady rhythm, as if the house itself remembers the path. The steadiness calms the amygdala that loves to shout about emergencies. It strengthens the prefrontal steward that quietly chooses alignment over impulse. Over time, this rhythm becomes character. And character is a kind of wealth that outlives seasons. When fear runs the house, overflow is the first door to be locked. The heart calls this prudence, but the consequences arrive quietly. Joy thins, work feels heavy, even when it pays well. Success becomes strangely private and oddly fragile, as if a knock at the door might expose the emptiness beneath the polish. The soul knows the difference between fullness and hoarding. Fullness carries warmth, hoarding carries weight. Fullness opens the hands without losing strength. Hoarding clenches the hands and still feels at risk. The river image clarifies what numbers cannot say by themselves. Water that moves stays clear. Water that refuses to move grows stale, grows sour, grows a film that no one wants to drink. Wealth behaves in much the same way. When value is allowed to serve a purpose beyond the mirror of the self, it becomes cleaner in the body. Anxiety eases because the story is larger than accumulation. Sleep deepens because meaning has entered the room. Gratitude rises because life is no longer measured only by what stays, but also by what moves and heals as it moves. Generosity in this frame is neither reckless nor performative. It is covenantal. It remembers that giving without wisdom can injure, and that wisdom without giving can harden. It asks gentle questions about alignment and impact. It chooses places where help becomes seed rather than spectacle. It respects limits so that care can continue next month and next year. This blend of softness and structure creates a feeling of rightness in the body. The jaw unclenches, the brow lifts. The heart finds a pace it can keep. Expansion gains depth inside this river. Ventures are not chosen because they glitter. They are chosen because they serve. Investments are not measured only by returns, but by the integrity of the path that produces them. Partners sense this and respond with a steadier kind of trust. Doors open that remain closed to those who chase without center. Results begin to arrive with less drama, not because challenges disappear, but because choices align with a story that holds under pressure. The person who once ran on adrenaline learns to run on cadence, and cadence is kinder to every system in the body. Steadfast remains the quiet guard of this house. Essentials and reserves are not shameful. They are shelter. They are the cool shade at midday that keeps the rest of the field alive. When these foundations are respected, overflow does not feel like loss, and expansion does not feel like gambling. A calm confidence spreads through the day. The breath that once waited for the other shoe to drop now belongs to a life that knows where its shoes are. The eyes that once scanned for threats now scan for opportunities that fit the calling they serve. Without flow, money grows and meaning shrinks. Without flow, success speaks loudly and satisfaction speaks softly. Without flow, relationships begin to orbit around fear rather than around purpose. And even generosity begins to feel like a performance required for approval rather than a joy rising from abundance. The cost is not just emotional, it is practical. Stagnation breeds waste. Projects without purpose devour time and appetite. Wins without sharing starve community and isolate the very person who long to belong. With flow, something else appears. Gratitude stops waiting for a future milestone and starts walking through the day. Work feels cleaner because it does not have to prove the worth of the worker. Decisions feel lighter because they belong to a story that includes others. Legacy stops being a distant word and becomes the quiet signature that appears on agreements, on opportunities, on the faces of those strengthened by the overflow that reached them at the right time. The nervous system reads this as home. The body settles, the spirit lifts. There is healing in the repetition. Rivers nourish. Reservoirs stagnate when they forget their gates. Rivers enlarge what they touch. Reservoirs shrink the soul when fear builds the walls. Rivers strengthen purpose by sending resources where life is already trying to grow. Reservoirs strengthen anxiety by feeding the story that nothing is ever enough. Let these lines move through you until their cadence replaces the old alarms. When wealth flows, life flows. When wealth serves, the heart rests. When wealth carries purpose, the future feels near and friendly. Imagine standing beside water that moves with patience and power. You can hear it. You can feel the cool along your skin. You can see the way it feeds the banks and gives the stones their shine. That is the sound of a wisely ordered life. It does not empty itself in a rush. It does not hoard itself in a corner. It moves with intention. It remembers where it has been and knows where it is going. In that motion, prosperity becomes more than a result. It becomes a way of being. The house holds. The name gathers warmth and weight. The path ahead opens like a valley that knows the river by heart. There is a way of living that steadies the breath before the day grows loud, a way that teaches the mind to choose cleanly without forcing it, a way that lets the heart keep its softness while it grows strong. It does not arrive as a program. It arrives as a rhythm, simple and human, returning like a tide until the nervous system learns to rest inside it. The body recognizes this kind of steadiness. Shoulders lower, the gaze steadies. Effort begins to feel guided rather than frantic. The day feels less like a storm to survive and more like a field to tend. The first strand of this rhythm is a quiet ledger that honors discernment. Morning opens with a question that prefers wisdom over urgency. and the room seems to widen. Midday asks which decision will compound across long years, and the future draws closer in a friendly way. Evening remembers which action carried both peace and fruit, and the body loosens as it tells the truth. This simple cycle is not a performance. It is a conversation with the self that loves you most. Over time, the brain rewires toward calm clarity, and that clarity becomes a habit that touches every choice. The second strand is a set of soft thresholds at the entrances to desire. A meaningful purchase waits a full day so that heat can cool and need can speak. The pause is not punishment, it is care. Commitments pass through counsel because perspective widens when trusted voices join the room. Advice here is not control, it is light. Attention that once fed on comparison is directed toward craft, so that the same hour that once emptied you now fills you with skill and quiet pride. The body feels this shift immediately. Breath deepens, rest returns. The third strand is a table where your name is protected. A small personal council meets with warmth and candor. Character sits at the head and keeps every plan honest. Strategy lays out models that make sense of complexity. Operations turns intention into systems that hold. Finance counts the cost and blesses the pace that reality can sustain. Truth speaks without perfume and keeps the work aligned with who you are becoming. Decisions held by such a circle carry a peace you can feel in your bones. They do not ask your nervous system to pretend. The fourth strand is a calendar that breathes. Seasons take turns rather than collide. There is a time to learn when roots search quietly for water beneath the surface. There is a time to build when patterns become processes that can bear weight. There is a time to gather when outcomes ripen and gratitude takes the lead. There is a time to prune when clearing makes room for strength to return. When the inner year is honored, effort and timing finally cooperate. The mind stops sprinting in all directions. The heart releases the fear of missing out and chooses the right season without apology. The fifth strand is a flow that remembers purpose. Resources arrive and find their places without drama. The steadfast room shelters essentials and reserves with dignity and calm. The expansion room shapes investments and ventures with courage and care. The overflow room gives birth to generosity and legacy that multiply, meaning beyond the mirror of the self. When movement is guided by these rooms, wealth stops feeling like a test and begins to feel like a servant with a worthy assignment. Anxiety loosens because the story is larger than accumulation. Together, these strands weave a life that holds under pressure. The ledger keeps choices honest. The thresholds protect value. The table widens sight. The seasons restore cadence. The flow keeps the water clear. What once required constant discipline becomes rhythm, and rhythm is kinder than discipline because it asks less each day while giving more over time. The body learns the pattern and begins to escort you toward it even when the mind is tired. You find yourself pausing before haste, listening before speaking, aligning before acting. This way of living softens relationships with money and with people. You begin to feel safer in conversations that once spiked your pulse. You sense earlier when a deal respects your future and when it only flatters your present. Agreements carry fewer surprises because promises were named with care. Wins feel clean. Losses turn into wisdom quickly because shame has no place to root. There is room in the day for gratitude that does not depend on outcomes, and that gratitude becomes an intelligence of its own. Notice the repetition that heals. Wisdom before action, rhythm before results, counsel before commitment, season before speed, flow before pride. Let these lines move with your breathing until the cadence of your day starts to echo them back. The shift is gentle and real. Sleep grows deeper. Focus grows kinder. Decisions grow honest. Peace begins to arrive on time. In the life arranged this way, prosperity does not need to shout. It enters as a quiet confidence that you can feel in your chest. It stays because the structure can carry it without cracking. It grows because it serves a purpose beyond itself, and you moving through your days with steadiness and warmth, begin to recognize that this was never about becoming someone else. It was about returning to the truest order of who you have always been. The room is quieter now. The breath has found a steadier rhythm. Somewhere inside, a line has been straightened and the house feels more honest. You can sense the difference in small ways. The mind no longer leaps for the nearest spark. The heart no longer bargains with its own worth. The body settles as if a chair was pulled out for it at a familiar table. In this calm, the story of wealth begins to sound less like a chase and more like a way of living that keeps faith with who you are. Look around the inner house you have been shaping. The plumb line hangs true and the walls carry weight without strain. The sealed jar holds clear water and no longer loses value through hidden cracks. The table is set with voices that care for your future and keep your name clean. The vineyard rests in its season and answers to rhythm rather than noise. The river moves with intention, feeding what it touches and returning with gratitude to its source. None of this is loud. All of this is strong. What you have gathered tonight is not a speech, it is a sequence. Wisdom before action, restraint before display, counsel before risk, season before speed, flow before pride. You can feel how these lines fit together. They are not cages, they are foundations. When they hold, opportunities feel lighter because they have somewhere to land. Decisions feel kinder because they are not at war with your values. Even uncertainty loses its sharpness because you are walking in a direction that makes sense whether the weather is fair or not. There is a softness in this way that does not weaken you. It strengthens you without hardening you. The nervous system understands and begins to trust the day. Sleep puts its arm around your shoulders. Attention stops running away and starts staying where it can do real work. The future steps closer, not as a promise of perfection, but as a quiet confidence that your choices can carry more light than fear. In that confidence, money becomes a servant rather than a judge. It supports what is worthy. It repairs what is broken. It lifts what is good. Let the images return for a final moment. A weighted line, a sealed jar, a warm table, a living vineyard, a clear river. They are simple. They are human. They are enough. When you feel lost, you can look for them. When you feel hurried, you can remember them. When you feel tempted to measure yourself by noise, you can step back into their steady weather and breathe again. In time, this becomes your climate. In time, this becomes the way your name sounds in rooms that matter. Carry one question as you leave this quiet space, a question that knows how to open doors inside you. If wisdom became the first move in every decision you make, what kind of wealth would naturally follow in your life? Let that question walk with you through morning and evening. Let it stand with you at the threshold of offers and endings. Let it keep you close to the order that brings peace with prosperity. When the answer begins to show itself, you will feel it in your chest before you see it on a page. It will feel like home. It will feel like truth. It will feel like a future that already knows your name.